department. Sorry. And for those online, we are live on Facebook as well as YouTube. Welcome. Welcome to Penang Institute's somewhat regular evening talks. And of course, as you know, our talk tonight, jointly organized with Gerak Budaya, talk entitled Shanghai City in Motion, the Rebirth of a Modern Metropolis with Nicky Almasy. And to moderate will be Gareth Richards. I was going to make a brief introduction to both Nicky and Gareth, but since Gareth needs no introduction and Gareth will introduce Nick, I'll just proceed to the talk itself and hand over the floor to Gareth Richards.
Thank you very, very much, Fawaz. A kind and very brief and to the point introduction. This is moving like a ghost. This is kind of nice. I mean, I could dance with it. You gonna fix it? A very, very warm welcome, everybody, and thanks for coming out on a Monday evening. And it's really good to see old friends. I don't mean that in any ageist sense, just friends that we've known for a very long time. As Fowler says, my name's Gareth Richards. I'll try to immoderately moderate this evening's session with you. And when Nicky first proposed the talk title, I thought I just misread it. I said it was Shanghai Emotion. I thought he was going to give us some very personal tales of his many years, his 10 years in Shanghai. But as he says, the talk is about Shanghai in motion, this notion of the city as a very dynamic space and a very dynamic place. So I want to ask and start with a question. Who's been to Shanghai? That's almost half, well, maybe 40% of the audience. Okay, so I hope you're going to sharpen your wits and ask him some very telling and pertinent questions for later. So both those of you who've been there and those of you who haven't, what image does Shanghai conjure up? Okay, that's just a question to think about. What image does it conjure up? I think if we think historically, we know for sure from archaeological records, from documentary records, that this area at the estuary of the Yangtze River, the Great Yangtze, actually dates right back to antiquity. It was already inhabited. There are some archaeological and architectural remains there. And certainly during the Song dynasty, so we're talking about the 11th and 12th century, it had already become a major center for maritime trade. So for a millennium, Shanghai has already had that idea of its relationship both to its hinterland, very rich hinterland, and of course to the sea. So it's that kind of pivot between land and sea, tanah air. And then it also means, I think, that historically, more than any other city in China, perhaps if for a moment we exclude Hong Kong, which is actually a much later city, much later settlement, it's the city in China that has most been shaped by international and indeed in modern times global forces. It was one of the 5 treaty ports that the Western powers opened up in the aftermath of the Opium Wars in the middle of the 19th century. So that then led, of course, to the international settlement for which Shanghai is known, and also the French concession. So that also shaped from the middle of the 19th century, again, a particular relationship between the city as a Chinese city drawing on its hinterland, but also as an international city. And then in the Republican period, so after the fall of the Qing in 1911, Shanghai was really at the epicenter of so much of 20th century Chinese history. It was a battleground between communist forces and Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist forces, for example. It saw the emergence of the very progressive and reformist May the 13th movement, and it was also the birthplace of anti-Japanese nationalism, anti-Japanese sentiment in the 1930s. So again, Shanghai plays this very interesting pivotal role in modern Chinese history. And then, you know, what other images does it conjure up? Well, gangsters, of course. I'm editing a book, a novel that's set in Rangoon of the 1920s. And the whole of the Rangoon underworld is controlled by who? Shanghai gangsters. So it's, you know, they're sort of transnational organization. Music, jazz, you know, Shanghai brought Tin Pan Alley and Hollywood film music to Asia. It was the epicenter of the Chinese film industry in the 1930s. So there's another image. There's another image there of this very cosmopolitan place in the interwar years. And that's going to be one of the main focal points of Nicky's talk this evening. And then today. Today, it projects itself very self-consciously as a global city. Yes, it's a Chinese city, but it really projects. If you look at Shanghai, the city government and other actors within the sort of Shanghai's modern political economy, this notion of it being a global city with all that that entails. I mean, it has a metropolitan area, the population, 30 million. That's almost the size of Malaysia, just in the metropolitan area of Shanghai. And that's been the product of a remarkable social, economic, political, and cultural change that's taken place over the last 4 decades or so. And that's the city in motion that Nicky will be talking about. But of course, the modern city, and it's emblematic, it's iconic, that its skyline, its architectural placemaking, is actually what a lot of people recognize as being that modern city. But that doesn't exist, of course, in a historical vacuum, as I've tried to suggest. So some of what Nicky will be saying, I think, will be looking at the relationship between the old and the new, but also perhaps giving us a sense of the world beyond that particular iconographic skyline that's presented to us. And I really think there are very few people better qualified to talk about Shanghai, its architectural history, its sense of place and space, than my good friend Nicky Almasy. Nicky's been living and working in Asia probably for more years than who cares to remember, but it's a long, long time. He's an award-winning photographer, and he's also a filmmaker. He's also a writer. He's a true Renaissance man. But his photography work, most of you have probably seen some of his work. And you'll be saying, how so? Well, no, maybe not. Maybe Air Asia is not posh enough for some of you, I guess. But if you have flown Air Asia at all in the last few years, you will have seen some of his work on the magazine covers, because he worked, was the lead photojournalist for Asia for 5 years. And in addition, and perhaps more pertinently for tonight's talk, for 5 years, he was also the official photographer for the Shanghai Tower, the world's 3rd tallest building. So from cutting the foundations and cutting the ground to the topping out of the building 5 years later, he had unparalleled access to this great iconic building. And so that gives us a kind of window and opening from which he can explore certainly the sort of global modern Shanghai. But much more than that, he's also been a historian of Shanghai's architecture. And there's a kind of interesting serendipity going on here, because Shanghai in the 20s and 30s, outside Europe, was probably the leading space presenting Art Deco architecture anywhere outside Europe. I mean, perhaps Chicago, perhaps New York, but Shanghai was this amazing place. And it just so happens that 2 of the greatest architects of that period, the 20s and 30s, happened to be Hungarians. Now, I'm not calling him an Orban supporting Hungarian micronationalist, but Nicky, I think, felt a certain affinity to this coincidence. And he published 2 books, and they're here on the table, looking at 2 of these great Hungarian architects. So excuse my Hungarian pronunciation, but Laszlo Hudec and also Karoli Gonda, 2 great, and we'll be seeing some examples of their work. And he's just showed me a new book that he's done on another Hungarian, but who worked in New York and in Germany. Nicky's latest book, which is actually a kind of really interesting memoir. We launched it last year, Recycling Reality, which is his journey through his own photographic work in many, many places. It's on sale here. Unfortunately, he's completely sold out of the architecture books, which I think is very, very bad business practice, if you ask me, Nicky. What else? He's just last week, a brand new book has just been published for which Nicky took all the photographs. And I don't think it's remiss of me to say it's Chris Ong's collection. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful book, over 200 pages. And that's going to be launched variously over the next coming weeks. And it's a stupendous, beautiful, beautiful book of Chris Ong's fabulous collection. And we happen to be working on another book for a Penang icon, but that's secret. I can't tell you about it. But we're working together on a new book, which should be due in 2025. Can you please give a very warm Penang welcome to Nicky Almasy?
I have to adjust the mic a little bit. First of all, thank you so much for coming, and thank you, Gareth, for that lovely introduction. Yeah, so this talk on Shanghai today will examine the city from its various architectural aspects, but it will also be from a perspective of a photographer. I lived in Shanghai for 10 years, and all this time I was working as Gareth says, as a photographer and filmmaker, and I was fortunate enough to be involved in a few major architecture developments and projects that truly shaped the city, not only in the past, but also in the present and for the future. And for some reason, from the moment I arrived to Shanghai, I always, from the beginning, I felt it was my duty to document the city of this breakneck speed of how it was developing right in front of our eyes, especially in the period that I was there from 2006 until 2016. It was very, very, very visible, and I will demonstrate this in photographs. Before that, I lived in London for 10 years and then in New York. And okay, my focus wasn't there. I was young, but I never ever seen around me this urban transformation taking place anywhere else. In Shanghai, buildings and blocks were disappearing literally within days and then rising out of the ground very quick within months and weeks. And sometimes it went to the extremes because, for example, like the Shanghai Concert Hall, which is at People Square, it was like moved away with like 100 meters, just shifted. So it was really the extremes. And this constantly shifting landscape, like unfolded right in front of my eyes, and I couldn't help but to document it. So I was, I'm not ashamed to say, I was a little bit in love with Shanghai. I was really, I could even say that I was obsessed with it because I was kind of monitoring every little thing that was happening. Architecture is a really beautiful subject to talk about, but I always like to reference it with a human element of it. So today, throughout this talk, I will kind of wrap it in this human garb or form, because as a photographer, my two favorite subjects have always been people and buildings. And if I find the intersection of these two, I just really go for it, and I try to find a human story in the architecture or behind it, or vice versa. So for me, this is like the perfect story. It's a really, really beautiful combination. So this focus started for me around the early 2000s when I moved to Shanghai. And on the first photo you see on the left side, you see Hudec's Laszlo. I started to discover Hudec's Laszlo's buildings around me, and I totally fell in love with them. And then Gonda came a little bit later after Hudec, but on the right side you can see Marshall Strabela, who is the chief architect of the Shanghai Tower. He used to, before, when he started the Shanghai Tower, he was working with the American architecture company called Gensler. And I started to shoot this tower on my own, this 128-story, 632-meter tower. And I was just, again, as I said, I was kind of obsessed with it as it started. And later on, I started to work. Why I loved working in the Shanghai Tower, because it was like happening real time. So with Hudec and Gonda, you have to go back in time and see their buildings, but this was actually happening right then. And even staying with this human reference, like why am I here in Penang and Malaysia? Again, that I've been working with Chris Song for a good couple of years now. And he's not an architect, but he's a visionary who consciously and beautifully shapes his environment. So this is how I found this story as well. So it's been a few years now. And whenever I find these stories, I'm willing to invest years into it. One more before we go on to the beginning of Shanghai, I just wanted to show you this poster. This photo of mine, which called The Three Brothers, won the best architecture, exterior architecture photo of 2013 with ENR, with Engineer News Review. And I was happy because they used it for the New York ceremony as a poster. But of course, I'm proud of it, and that's why I'm showing it to you. It has the Jim Mao Tower on the left, the half-finished Shanghai Tower in the middle, and the SWFC building on the right. But why I'm showing you this, because it has this great quote, these two lines over the photo: behind every building, behind every great building is a person you should meet. And I think it kind of resonates with what I'm saying. You have to know about Shanghai that to strip it down to the very basics, how modern Shanghai is and how the people who live there and experience it, like in their everyday lives, is that there's two parts of it. Pudong, which is the modern side, and Puxi, which is the old one. But I must say this is like a very simple interpretation of it, because obviously there's a lot of districts and so it's more complex. So you can see in these two photos that it's really stunning how the modern part Pudong changed in a couple of decades. The first photo, I think it was taken in I think in the 1980s or something, and the second one must be, I think, 2010 and 11, because the Shanghai Tower is not showing yet. But look at that. I mean, it's just amazing how it changed together. It's unbelievable. I used, as a photographer, I was really blown away and inspired for years, because when I stopped between the two, it was like such an amazing contrast how the two parts of Shanghai were just staring at each other through across the river. You will see this in photographs. But let's go back to the very beginning of Shanghai. So some early accounts, some foreign description describes Shanghai a wasteland without houses, fetid seething with tunnels. Odors are suffocating, and the eyes can't find nothing attractive or beautiful to rest upon. And the third one just simply says misery, stench, slush, dilapidation. It's very unkind words, but let's not forget that these accounts were from people from foreign lands, who most of them outsiders who came from a completely different world, and they've never seen this kind of world before. So some argue that Shanghai wasn't a nondescript fishing village struggling to survive on China's coast. Shanghai was actually, and I quote here, a clearly defined area, highly regarded by local Chinese, it was a subject of strict land ownership from the very beginning. Even foreign powers had their eyes on it. So let's look at Shanghai's name for clues now. This is not really about architecture, but this is more about the spirit of the place. So Shanghai has two characters, Shank meaning up, upper, above, and sea is high. So it's a suggestion that the city is up from the sea, or above the sea, or rise from the sea. And literally it means actually the city upon the sea, but the etymology is often argued. But one thing is for sure, that it has this inherent positivity to it. But what was Shanghai like in the beginning? What shaped it? What did it look like? Like every successful city, Shanghai was like I would say every successful and exciting city, Shanghai was built on river. Except it was built on two rivers, one the Huangpu River and the Wusong River, which is now the Suzhou Creek. Actually, the Wusong River used to be much wider. And Shanghai also lies 15 miles, just 15 miles from Yangtze River, which is the biggest river in China that practically cuts China in half. And even on the top of that, it has access to the hinterlands and to the sea. But why is this so important from the perspective of architecture? Because that brought on what we see in this illustration, that brought on the first physical big change, a defensive wall, the largest physical wall in the 1550s under the Ming Dynasty, when they created the walled city, which is in Chinese Xinjiang, which became the traditional core, traditional or urban core of Shanghai. So this is where somewhere where the bond is now. This walled city is was 2.5 miles in circumference, 20 foot high, 30 foot deep. This surrounded it, and it had 6 gates to it. And inside, all the activities were attributed to the trade of produce. So, for example, there were fish street, fruit street, and meat street, and stuff like that. But this walled city ultimately lacked the systemized street layout, and even overall, but it wasn't built like any other imperial cities, like, for example, Peking or Beijing. Someone described Shanghai's growth of more organic rather than structural design, actually. What remains of this right now that still exists is one renowned Shanghai landmark. I think you can recognize this from Yew Garden. It's the willow pattern tea house. They call it that because it's resemblance to the famous willow pattern pottery. So the pavilion, as you can see, it stands in a small upon a small pond, and very much functional. Actually, you can get some good dim sum in there, and it's connected with this zigzag path to the bank, because they wanted to evil spirits known to move in straight lines, so they wanted to confuse them. That's why they wanted to fox evil spirits. The walled city actually was demolished in 1912 all together, but these parts remained, the Dajinger Pavilion. And I think it still exists. I haven't been in Shanghai for a good couple of years, but I think this is still there. And it's hard to imagine now, but back then, all the purpose, and this is how we arrived to the bond, all the purpose of Shanghai's development were rendered around trade. So there were no proper city planning. Not architects, but merchant designed it and built it solely for the purpose of trading. One of the quotes say here that commerce was, this is what I highlighted because it shows that exactly. Commerce was the beginning, middle, and end to our existence in China. If it wasn't for trade, not one man, apart from the missionaries, would have come here at all. Sorry, that word is would. So a lot of what was happening around the bond This is very shocking. If anyone lived in the bond, this is an unbelievable illustration. Was Compradoric architecture. Does anyone know what is Compradoric architecture? Compradoric architecture means that architecture produced without the expertise of an actual architect. So, and comprador also means, so somebody came in and started a company, and there was the Chinese, sorry about this, the Chinese local contractor, and the comprador was actually the middleman who connected them and helped them. So, and one thing I wanted to mention is whether it's the walled city, the Bond, or any other parts of the city, whoever lived in Shanghai knows that this mixture of foreign and Chinese influence and the conflict drives really Shanghai up to this very day, whether it's architecture or anything else. And the reason I highlighted this because for many decades, I put together these two. So the first one is a Chinese opinion. So Chinese considered Western buildings unsuited for the local environment and pitiful compared to their own, constructed from local materials and using traditional methods. And second one is obviously opposing this a foreigner. Wilderness of low one-story building, a mean place, actually not important to justify the dignity of the wall. So this is again very unkind words. And so the term bond, we still at the bond. The bond derived from India, meaning embankment. There were many bonds: the Suzhou Creek bond, the Yangying bond, the Defense Creek bond, and of course the big bond that we know today. And this was the major one. And by the end of 1843, 11 mercantile houses lined up facing the river, so facing what is Pudong today, really. It was more bucolic and countryside setting. And needless to say that, of course, there were no high-rises back then, but imagine a Shanghai that was completely flat. And the only building that actually pierced the horizon was this Longhua Pagoda. It's just unbelievable. So the bond formed on the eastern boundary of, so somewhere at where the Suzhou Creek flows into the Huangpu River, and originally of the international settlement by Suzhou Creek. So it's really the face of Shanghai, and it definitely has this European feel to it. I remember when I first went to Shanghai, I really couldn't believe. I lived in Hong Kong and Shenzhen before, and I was really shocked to see the bond. I didn't know much about it, I must say. I will highlight a few before we go to the second subject. Just this is how the bond looks like now. And the first building is the Bank of Indochina, which was built in 1914. And this was the first building. It's a very unassuming building and not special like the other ones. But the reason I highlighted this because it first used this concrete raft that became essential element for all the other buildings. It was designed by Atkinson and Dulles. The next one is Peace Hotel, of course. The Peace Hotel was two buildings. The Art Deco building, of course, built in 1926 and originally called the Sassoon House. And the Art Deco part, the main one is used now in the Fairmont Hotel, and the other one is the Palace Hotel, Swatch Art Hotel, and obviously between them is the Nanjing Road. Of course, the bond wouldn't be bond without the Customs House. Sorry, the Customs House, which is if you would take away this tower of the Customs House, the bond would be unrecognizable. It's very, very important. And this is actually the first two buildings. The first one, the Chinese one, and the second one, both were on the bond actually. And so as the bond took its final shape, as we know it today, one exceptional architect arrived to Shanghai. And now let's talk about a very special story that just shaped Shanghai in an incredible way. And this is, in the beginning, I mentioned the human story behind the architecture, and you will see what I mean about this, because there's such a human struggle around it, and how a dramatic turn of fate, an entirely hopeless situation, can turn a city around. This is incredible. It's just an incredible story, even without my relation to it as a Hungarian. And I think in a few minutes you will see why people are still fascinated and why people still talk about Hudec Laszlo. So what do we know about Hudec Laszlo? He was born in 1893 in Besztercebánya in Banska Bystrica, which was originally a Hungarian territory, later became Czechoslovakia and Slovakia. And he died in Berkeley, California in 1958. From his mother's side, he was Hungarian, and from his father's side, he was Slovakian. However, history tore his homeland to many parts because of the World War I, and how he dealt with this was that he kept his dual attachment to both of these countries throughout his life. However, a lot of records show that he was leaning more towards the Hungarian side. So this is what really Slovakians don't really like to hear, because there's always an argument about this. Even when we produced the Hudec book, it was we had an book opening in Shanghai and in Budapest, and of course we had to invite the Slovakian consulate, and everybody had to be careful what we were saying in our speeches. And also when I shot his buildings from with drone, and when I uploaded it to YouTube, and I think I put Hungarian first, so Hungarian Slovakian architect Hudec Laszlo, and the comment section became like a battlefield because of this. So I never delete any YouTube comments from my channel, but I really had to, because it was getting too nasty. So anyway, what shows that we are right Hungarians is that three things. He kept his letters home to Hungary only in Hungarian. This is very important because his letters were very important in the archive that we have about him. And then he changed his Czechoslovakian passport to Hungarian. And lastly, a couple of decades later, he became the honorary consul of Hungary in Shanghai, serving his fellow countrymen's interest. Hudec Laszlo had an extremely adventurous and challenging life, especially in the beginning. And after finishing university studies in Budapest, and I have to say that before he finished his studies, he had the bricklayer, carpenter, and stonemason also under his belt. So I want to highlight one crucial moment here. We are in 1916. He's serving in the Austro-Hungarian army. And we are in Ukraine, Volhynia. And when the Russians break through the Hungarian army's front line, and they're forcing them to flee. So they're fleeing towards Poland, so towards the west. And the Hungarian command sends a reconnaissance group ahead, led by the young lieutenant Hudec Laszlo, who speaks Ukrainian and Polish. However, this recce group runs into a convoy carrying armory, and as soon as they see them, of course, they open fire on them. Most of them die, and Hudec Laszlo suffers a head injury, possibly from a rifle butt, and this is how he's captured in the spring of 1916. First, they take him to Kiev, so to the east, to Moscow and Makaryev, and then to the worst when it comes to prison camp, the hell of our prison camps, obviously, to Siberia. In 1917, he ends up in a place called Krasnaya Rechka, where they treat the Slovakian prisoners a little better, so he can keep his letters home and can receive letters. But more importantly, why I highlight this point, because he uses his architecture studies to design wooden churches, which the soldiers assemble. Imagine that he already does that in captivity. The same year, in 1917, he has a typhoid infection, a very serious typhoid infection. Then he suffers an injury from a horse accident. There he is in the lower row, the second one. So a horse accident where his left leg breaks in many places, his shin bone breaks in many places, and but he actually his left leg becomes shorter for the rest of his life. But this is his luck. Because of his injuries, they hand him over to the Dutch Red Cross in 1918, and they already put him on a train to head back. But the chaos in Russia is so big that the train is just stranded there for a long time at Lake Baikal, and this is the moment when he decides to escape. And he's stationed there for a while in the town of Hilok. He finds work and as a Trans-Siberian railway maintenance company. Here a few things happen. That here he obtains a fake passport, and the Czech Legion in the region is taking prisoners to join them. So he really wants to avoid that. So he changes his plans, and instead of west, he tries to go to the east. So he obtains a letter of safe conduct to get into China. And the last movement of this, that with his companions, with his friends who he is escaping with, they get hold of this handcar, a steel working engine, and they made the final escape to Harbin, to the Chinese border. And so they finally cross the border, and from here to Shanghai, the way is open. So he arrives to Shanghai on the October 26th of 1918. And I think it's worth to stop here for a moment, because just to marvel about this a little bit, because a man arrives in Shanghai who injured, limping, without anything, and practically a nobody. And exactly 100 years later, in 2014, they choose him into the 99 symbols of Shanghai as the only foreigner. And if someone lived in mainland China knows what this means, it's they don't really like to give credit to foreigners. So so imagine that. At this point in Shanghai, especially, as you can see, the bund is booming, rapidly increasing population, crying out for architects. So it was the perfect environment for this young man, and he found himself in the world of banks and hotels and residential buildings coming up. And what he doesn't plan to stay there, but he decides that while his legs heal up, he finds some work, and then he goes back to Europe and earns some money. So he takes an architectural job, and at the firm of a person called Roland Curry. Roland Curry is an American who first opened the first architecture office in Shanghai in that time. He's from Ohio, actually. So he gets bigger and smaller jobs from Curry and designs offices and industrial sites and apartments, and in 1 year he leads the office, and in 2 years he becomes a partner. But during this time he suffers from homesickness, and I was really debating with myself if I should include this or not. But I think it's an important thing, because his father dies in 1920 in December, and he's very, very homesick. I think he just war ripped him out of his home, and I don't think he had closure. So this overwhelms him, and he goes back to the funeral. And why I needed to mention this, because after the funeral he goes on a European inspirational, architecture inspirational tour where he visits Venice, Torino, Firenze, Roma, London, Munich, all these places. Then he goes back to Besztercebánya, and then finally he goes back to Shanghai in 1921, the second half of 1921. But this trip generates a lot of architectural drawings, books full of, he takes 800 photos. And when he returns to Shanghai in the second half of 1921, this is the moment when Hudec Laszlo's story really begins. He designed and built over 100 buildings in Shanghai, and under the period of 28 years. And his style is very diverse. Classicist, modernist, of course, Art Deco, eclectic, among many others. And in the book that we published, this book in 2017, why this was very special? Because we collected all the buildings that still exist, actually, that's still standing. And his work really defines Shanghai. So it was very, very hard for me to pick and choose which buildings to include, but let's see. Park Hotel, built in 1934, is actually considered his masterpiece. This is Art Deco masterpiece. And it's the building is significant because it had 22 stories, almost 84 meters high, and it was hailed as the tallest and the most modern building until 1983. And I'll show you one more photo. I mean, I love this photo. It looks like it was taken yesterday, really, but actually this is the race course in front of Park Hotel, and it must have been taken around the 30s or 40s. But even on, if you look at the next pair of photos, this shows Shanghai so much. This photo wasn't taken too long ago, actually, in the 1960s. Actually, the church, you can see on the other side of the park, it was also designed by Hudec Laszlo. And so this was taken in the 1960s. And when you look at a photo from the next one in the 90s, I mean, this describes Shanghai as it is. The same building in a sea of skyscraper. It's just incredible. And imagine this was taken in the 90s. So I just wanted to highlight. Actually, this building was really remarkable. This is still in the Park Hotel. I was shooting a lot for the Hungarian consulate, and it's still it's still recognized like a Hungarian heritage building, and most of the Hungarian events are taking place in this one. This is the back of the facade, actually. If you ever seen Travel 360 AirAsia magazine, because I actually included one in my cover story, it was taken here, right on those stairs. I put a model there, and I think 2017 or something. But I felt very, very privileged because not many people are allowed to go to the back of this facade. The next one is the Christian Literature Society Baptist Publication Building. I'm mentioning two names here because actually it's a twin building. So one of them facing west is the Christian Literature Society building, and the other one is the Baptist facing east. It was used by the Chinese Baptist Publishing House. Both of them functioned simultaneously as a publisher and a bookshop. And the Christian Society was one of the first publishing houses in the country that released Western publications. And at one point of his career, actually, just going back 1 second, I will show you the drone images and the drone video that I did previously, so you will see why it's like a twin building. The next one, I just wanted to say that he had an office in there. I'm not sure if this is the office that was actually in the building, but I mean, look at the Park Hotel drawing in the back. It's really, really beautiful. The next one is a very important building, Normandy Apartments, 1924. So it's a 100-year-old building. this year. When you look at it, which building does it remind you of? Just the shape? Yes, the Flatiron building. And this building had many names, actually. It had it, it, it was commissioned by the International Savings Society, and then its name was the Wukang building because Wukang Road is just next to it. This big road is Huahailo, the shopping street, and Wukang building. But the saddest one was really the diving board, because during the Cultural Revolution, the Red Guards kind of mock named it to diving board because a lot of intellectuals were living in this building, and they jumped out of the windows, and it has a tragic history, actually. And today, of course, it's like it's one of the most popular building of Hudec Laszlo. If you go there today in the weekends and all that, it's full of like Instagrammers and stuff like that. The next one is, this is a little bit older photo. The next one is the Greenhouse D.V. Woods Residence, 1935. This is an iconic green tiled Art Deco style residency of Hudec Laszlo, built in 1935. And the owner, D.V. Wood, was a famous Shanghai paint industry tycoon who produced a lot of green paint for the military, so that's why it's green, actually. But it's an unbelievably beautiful building, and even you can find only books about this particular building only on that. The next one, I just wanted to show you these ones. Yeah, I took the drone here. It's actually right now is the Shanghai Urban Planning and Design Research Institute. And actually, I took drone footage of almost all his buildings, but this one I wasn't supposed to. But I got the drone out, and by the time it went up, everybody was running out of the building, like stop. But I already had the footage, so the next one was very special. American Club, 1924, built in Georgian style, decorated with brown bricks imported from America. And this had like pool, bowling alley, and the library. The reason why this was so special, because for some reason they locked it down for decades. I mean, nobody could, even the biggest Hudec fans in Shanghai couldn't get into this building. And I worked together on this book with Livia San Martoni, and I used to call her the Iron Lady because she could achieve anything, and they kept refusing us with this. They didn't want to let us in, but she was bombarding them with letters and phone calls and emails and letters and just on and on for months. And in the end, they said, okay, just go in for 2 hours, do whatever you want. And I even took the drone into the building. So a lot of big Hudec fans were very jealous. When we went into this building, I mean, I don't know if you will understand my reference, but it was like going into the Titanic, because it was like completely dark. And look at this. When we were walking on this floor, it was dust coming up, and it was just an incredible experience. Look at that. It's this office. The monitor, I think the monitor over there just tells how long nobody been in this building. The next one is Liu Jisheng Residence, 1931, also known as the Garden of Psyche. The garden villa, this villa bears Italian and Greek styles, and Hudec Laszlo, so the other one he did for that paint maker, and now this one was a coal tycoon Liu Jisheng's request. It was the 40th birthday gift for Jisheng's beloved wife. And he actually, Hudec Laszlo, gave this. So this statue is in the garden, and it's a symbol of love. bathing springs of water surrounded by four angels, and this was carved in Italy from marble, and it was Hudec's gift to the couple actually. So, and right now the building has belonged to the Shanghai Writers Association since 1952. The next one is Sunker's residence. So Hudec did this building for himself. He built it for himself. He wanted to move in with his family, but the minister of Chinese Railways, the son of Kuomintang founder Dr. Sun Yat-sen's son, loved it so much that in the end he gave it to him. So he lost that. It was completed in 1929 and built in Baroque and Italian style. And so he had to build another home for himself. And I think this is the last building I will show you today from him. It's the Hudec's house, the Hudec's residence, which he was living in from 1931 until 1936 with his family. It's like a mock to the style. And yes, today this building is the Hudec's Memorial Hall. And what I love about it, it's like if you look at the drone footage here, it's like so condensed into these buildings, like jammed up with other buildings. You can hardly find it. And look at that in the 1930s. It was like in the middle of a field. And these are the kids in front of it. And the daughter who is sitting in the middle, I met in 2013 in Shanghai in the Park Hotel. So it was such a wonderful thing. But I have the biggest regret about this because back then I didn't do any videography, or I was just starting videography, and we had this interview with her, and I never recorded it. And she passed away after that. This I just wanted to show you because soon after the stamps came out, you can see it later when you, if you want to come up. But this was a huge privilege for me because it was such an honor to have my photographs on a Hungarian national stamp. So I'm not sure how much time we have, but I would like to go on to Gonda Károly. Obviously, I'm not going into, I promise you, I'm not going into another life story of somebody, but I just wanted to tell you that his story was very similar. He was also serving in the Austro-Hungarian army, and he was captured also. He was in Vladivostok, and his luck was that in Vladivostok, where he was in a prison camp, there was one lady who had 3 kids and split up with her husband, was looking for someone from a prison camp who was well educated enough to teach the children. So they picked Károly Gonda because Gonda spoke like 5 languages, and he started to teach the kids, and obviously they fell in love because the husband actually wasn't there. And sorry, this is very simple. And what happened that from Vladivostok they moved to Shanghai, and this is where he started to. Sorry, I didn't include this stuff. Yeah, he studied in Hungary and Vienna and London. So this is one of his buildings, and this was very, very special for us because when we were completing the Hudec's book, suddenly we came across this other architect that designed like a really major. It wasn't a minor architect, but not too known, and we came across his buildings, and we finished the Hudec's book in 2017. So immediately when we released it, we started to do the Gonda book immediately. This is one of his buildings, the Cathay Theatre. It was one of the most modern cinemas. Bank of East Asia, which is a very, there's this Art Deco tower on the top with the pergolas, and the Carson Perry Scott Chicago building. It was very similar to that. And this one also, this is a Art Deco building on the Bund. And let's see what else we have. Yeah, this is the drawing. This is from the inside. You can have a look at the book after we finished. And I felt really bad because, you know, I'm talking about foreigners here and I'm talking about China. So I just wanted to make sure that I include these wonderful Chinese architects. Robert Fan, who did the Chinese YMCA. All of these, by the way, all of these Chinese architects, most of them studied abroad in America and England. And Shanghai Concert Hall, the Nanking Theater. This was the one that I, in the beginning, I'm not sure if you remember, I said that they shifted the building away. And this is the old one. I look at that. They shifted it around, I think, like 100 meters or something. This could only happen in Shanghai. Really, I couldn't believe it, really. I should have done like a video of this, how they did this, like a time lapse. The Majestic Theatre, always, and Poigumli, which is a Bank of Canton, and the Sun department store. So now I feel better that actually I included these Chinese architects. And I don't know how much time we have. I just wanted to go into the Shanghai Tower a bit. I think it's important because I wanted to balance past and future. So I worked on this tower from 2010 and until 2015 with Marshall Strabela, who actually, what happened that I started to shoot the groundbreaking and everything just for myself, just for documentation. I went there with my scooter and started to take photos. And one day my editor called me in the, I was working for this expert magazine for a couple of years called That's Shanghai. And my editor told me I was heading to a shoot, and he said, Nicky, just turn around because we need to shoot somebody's portrait, and it's very, very important. So come to where I am now. And so I found myself, so I've been shooting the Shanghai Tower rising out of the ground. I was shooting for a good couple of months now, and I was kind of obsessed with it, like always. And suddenly I found myself in the office of Marshall Strabela, the chief architect of the Shanghai Tower, which was obviously the second tallest structure on Earth until 118 Merdeka. So I got to know him, and my editor met. So we took the portraits. The article came out. And after that, my editor told him that, you know, Nicky, the guy who shot your portraits, why he had a lunch with him in Singapore or something, and he said he's shooting the tower just for himself. Like, why don't you do something together? So one thing led to another, and we worked together for 5 years. And I was one of the only foreigners who was let on the site, and Marshall took me in, and it was just an incredible couple of years. This is actually a rendering. It's not an actual photo. And yeah, I started to shoot Marshall. So again, I guess it's a good finish that this was the most incredible human and architectural story that I ever came across, because it was in real time, and I could do it for a couple of years. And especially that Marshall was going through a lot of trouble because they fought with, I don't know if you know the architecture company Gensler, American company, and that they had an argument, and so there were lawsuits flying around everywhere, and I was there with him in the middle of this period. So yeah, this is him. Actually, he was also on the Burj Khalifa, not just on the team, and also Canary Wharf. So we just became friends after that. This is when I started to shoot it, when I didn't know Marshall actually, but I was so lucky because I used to teach English in one of the buildings next to it, and every Monday morning, I was so excited because I could see into this the hole, so I could shoot it. And this is the photo that I showed you in the beginning for the New York ceremony poster, but this was black and white, and this was the original. So the three brothers, the Jinmao Tower, the half-done Shanghai Tower, and the SWFC. Actually, just so you know, the three buildings actually represent China's past is the Jinmao Tower, which was built by SOM in 2003. It represents China's past because it's a stainless steel pagoda building. The second one, the SWFC, which was built by Mori, I think by Mori Architecture Company, which is a Japanese architecture company, and it represents China's present because China is open and willing to put history behind. And actually, to be honest, I wanted to mention this, yes, that they also call it the bottle opener building. Obviously, it looks like that. And this, the hole on the top was actually, when they designed it, it was a circle. But imagine when the sun comes up and everything turns red. So there's like a big Japanese symbol on. So they quickly changed that to a rectangle one, and also people didn't like it because of its feng shui, because it looks like a big knife in the middle of the city. So Chinese people actually hated this building. And then the Shanghai Tower, which is like a circular building, represents China's future because it looks in all directions. That's the idea. So yeah, you can see some of the. I wish I could show you more photos because they're really, really stunning. I mean, imagine 5 years I did that, and this photo. I don't know if you can see it, but it's between the crane and the building, and those buildings in somewhere down there, like 30-story buildings, and just there's this little net to jump through to the crane. And people ask me always, like, if I'm afraid of heights, and I am actually. But this was such an honor to do this building that I had to fight it somehow. Look at that. There's no safety, nothing, and the Jinmao is there in front of us. Just unbelievable. I think this is where I finish because it's time, and yeah, I could go on, but I think it's a good time to finish. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nicky.
And would it be okay to run this video?
Sure.
I really wanted to show you. It's really beautiful. It shows Hudec's his work, and then we can wrap up.